Hey, what's up? It's Comic95, the Savior, and for this video, I'm going to be giving you some advice for how to quickly find a job by simply telling you the difference between the different companies that you can work for, so breaking them up in categories by kind of like the work you're expected to do. So this should kind of help you narrow down where you want to apply to, and also by giving you a list of companies that pretty much hire everyone. So if you want to hear me go into more detail about each individual company or get an exact link to them, please visit my blog. I have all of the links there for you to apply to these companies directly. But otherwise, continue to watch this video if you are simply looking for someone to explain to you what exactly is the difference between an ALT and, an English language instructor at a language school or international school, etc. So let's get started. Long story short, if you've ever heard anyone talk about working in Japan, you already know that teaching English is probably the most talked about, easiest, most profitable job to do here in business for foreigners in Japan. However, people normally talk about teaching English as though every company or every job is the same, and that simply isn't true. A big part of why people have different experiences teaching here in Japan isn't just because people feel differently about work, or they come from different countries, or they have different, degrees, etc., but also because the company that they work for has them doing a different type of teaching. For example, an assistant language teacher is not going to have the same experience as an international school teacher, who also won't have the same experience as a language school teacher. Because, for starts, the time that you spend with your students is completely different, what you're teaching is completely different, and oftentimes the age group is completely different, as well as the rules for the school and the students' English capabilities to begin with. So there's a lot of differences between these schools. So I'm going to talk about the three main categories. There's always more to be added for teaching in Japan. So the first and most popular teaching that you probably see in Japan is really kind of a tie, but in my opinion, I would say the vast majority of people teaching in Japan are actually working as assistant language teachers. So these are people that come over to Japan on things like the JET program, etc. So to kind of give you a breakdown of what an assistant language teacher is, it can sometimes mean exactly what it says, where you are literally assisting with teaching the language, but other times it can actually be where you are the homeroom teacher for that specific language. So long story short, most assistant language teachers work for a dispatch company, whether it be a government-run program or an individual, privately owned program. Basically, these teachers are not real homeroom teachers, and their job is solely, excuse me, I have to on my lip. Their job is solely to teach their students English. So you generally have anywhere from like 50 to 200, 300 plus students, if not more. You might be the only teacher or one of, anywhere from 5 to 20 teachers for the entirety of the school, depending on how big it is. Oftentimes, assistant language teachers often switch different schools. So you're not just working for one company, but rather you work in one area. You might be required to have a car in order to quickly commute from school to school. You might have more rules. For example, some schools don't allow you to ride on bicycle. You're only allowed to take the train to get to work. Those that do allow you to ride your bike, you're expected to, set forth a good example for your students. So you have to wear a helmet, no headphones, little things like that you might find to be, annoying. This position works best for people that kind of have good, speaking skills. You're okay with public speaking. You've probably worked with children before, you know how to maintain a class, etc. But you might not be the best with planning a curriculum. You also don't mind not necessarily taking the lead. Depending on the school you're working with and who your Japanese homeroom teacher is, it can determine whether or not you like this job, as well as the program that you're with. So keep in mind programs like the JET program, where you could potentially be placed somewhere random. Depending on who you're talking to, the program can be hit or miss. If you're placed somewhere where, the staff is bad, you don't have a lot of friends, you might not enjoy it. But if you're somewhere where you have lots of friends, you enjoy the people that you're working with, the Japanese staff treats you well, you have a say in what you do, you know how to plan, do curriculums, etc., you know how to lesson plan, you might find this to be a very rewarding position. ALT positions also work well for people that prefer to teach junior high and or high school, because generally speaking, most ALT jobs are strictly for junior high or high school. Japan is further expanding their English language courses and are now starting to teach in elementary school as well, and even some kindergartens that are not international schools look for assistant language teachers, but that is a more rare thing. Most jobs are going to be strictly for junior high and high school, which you might think you prefer because you don't have to deal with the screaming and crying, but there are new challenges. You will have to deal with students that don't respect you because you are a foreigner, students that don't want to learn English, students that try to be the class clown and either make fun of you for your looks, your race, your accent, just give you a hard time. And the classes are generally much bigger. You would generally have classes anywhere from 25 to 40 plus students. And most of their, material, in my opinion, is not natural. There's a lot of broken, weird, strange English and some mixed stuff. You might be dealing with, using British and Australian English in combination with, American English, and it can just get really confusing, really complicated for you as a teacher. But again, if you prefer older kids, you might like that. Also, the fact that you get to switch around students, there's pros and cons to that. Maybe you like keeping just the same set of students and building with them versus being in a classroom where you'll never know all the students' names. Pretty much the only way you'll learn your students' names working as an ALT for most people is if the student was problematic and thus you had to remember their name because they always gave you a hard time. But otherwise, you'll probably just feel like, I can't even explain it. Like, you feel like you're not human, like you're just a robot. You're going from class to class, school to school, and just doing your job, basically. It can be very stressful and tiresome switching around so much and not really knowing, where you're going to be next year, etc., or how this is going to go. But generally speaking, most schools have you kind of set in stone, so you're not going to have random hours for the most part. You would normally have a set schedule. So for example, you might have to go to 2 or 3 different schools per week, and it would be the same days every week at the same time. There are exceptions to this rule. It totally depends on the company, totally depends on the age group, and of course your teaching skills. But generally speaking, you will work somewhere between 1 to 3 different schools, and you might have to commute to different schools on the same day. So for example, you might be at one school during the daytime and have another school in the afternoon or evening. You generally still end up working the same hours that someone working at an international or a language school does work, but again, you lack in most circumstances the freedom that someone at a different type of company would have. For example, you're not expected to normally do a lot of, lesson planning. Your lesson planning is very limited. It's made to coincide and go together and has to be approved by the Japanese homeroom teacher in most circumstances. Whereas someone working at a different school might have more freedom and be more in charge of the curriculum and lesson plans, which if you're someone that doesn't like to lesson plan, this works for you. But if you're someone that likes to have things done a certain way, and maybe you care a little more about what the students are learning, you're not just doing this for a paycheck, you really care about them learning English, you might not like this job. But again, it totally depends on the company. Some companies do give you full, creative license to do whatever you want, and they trust that, you know what you're doing with the students, or they might have it where they just want to look over it to make sure it is appropriate and is okay, which is totally understandable. So again, it totally depends on what you are capable of doing, what you personally prefer. There is no one company that is, better or worse than the other. I personally don't like being an assistant language teacher, but some people absolutely love it. And some people find that they do have more freedom, or they like that they don't have to worry about lesson plans, or they like working with the Japanese staff. It's totally up to you. It depends on the person, depends on the teacher, depends on the city. The salary can range a lot. Generally, assistant language teachers get paid less than teachers that work at an international school, but they typically make more or the same as teachers that work at a language school, aka Eikaiwa. However, teachers that work on something like the JET program generally get paid more than the average international school and Eikaiwa teacher. So again, it totally depends on the teacher, country of origin, degree, experience, all of that type of stuff. There's a lot that goes into it, but long story short, assistant language teachers literally do just that. You assist the actual teacher. You're not the homeroom teacher, and you don't really have your own set of students in most cases. There's exceptions to every rule, but that's how it generally goes. So older kids, no curriculum planning, very little minimal lesson planning, and again, you're kind of switching around between students and schools. So if you're someone that likes change, likes to have different scenery, different students throughout the day, it makes your day go by faster, maybe this is the better job for you. Okay, so moving on, we are going to talk about Eikaiwa, or language school teachers. So language school teachers pretty much do the same thing as ALTs, except in this case, you will get to know your students personally because you will see the same students every week on the same day at the same time. So generally speaking, you'll have the same students once a week for anywhere from 30 minutes to as long as 1 hour long. I would say on average lessons are about 45 to 55 minutes long, in which you would be teaching them from a preset curriculum where you have textbooks that the students have paid for, and you also have a copy that you can work from within the classroom. You are generally given a ton of freedom. You can do whatever you want to teach the students as long as you are using the textbooks that the school has purchased both for you as the teacher and for the students. So these workbooks also typically come with activity books. So there's a book for them to get the vocabulary, get the sentence structure, and another one for them to practice with. You have to use a lot of creativity to be a language school teacher, because if you just try to go straight through the book, you can easily finish the entire book in like a month or two and be done. But you have to remember, as a language teacher, your goal is to reinforce what they've already learned and to spend time, kind of, I won't say drag on the lesson, but obviously make sure that they're really getting the material, because otherwise chapters generally are only somewhere between 2 to no more than 6 pages, and most of these pages are just pictures and song lyrics for whatever song goes together with the lesson. So you really have to know what you're doing as a teacher, be creative, know how to add things onto your lesson. I have a separate video that does talk about this for you, so if you need some advice, you can check that out. I would try to remember to link it below. If not, please check out my playlist on my YouTube channel for how to work in Japan. It has all that information there for you for tips on how to make your lessons last longer. This really helps you if you're new to teaching English. But anyway, this is definitely a great start for people that are brand new to teaching English, people that don't have degrees, and students. You'll probably find that working at a language school really gives you the help and support you need to learn how to be a teacher, because you're working with a textbook, so you can kind of get ideas as to how to teach, what they need to learn, and there's lots of room for you to grow because you're working with different age groups and you're constantly moving around and you're kind of working more closely with the other teachers. Like, you work separately, but you can kind of bounce ideas off of them as long as they're a nice person, which depending on the school or the person, they can be, and they can be really helpful. They can be understanding to the fact that you're new to teaching. So yeah, with these schools, you're pretty much teaching straight from a textbook. You don't have to do a lot of lesson planning, if any at all. And generally, your job is basically to be a social butterfly. You have to do a lot of ad-libbing, a lot of thinking of questions to ask the students. It's a lot of repetitive teaching. You repeat after me, say this, sing this song. How are you? How old are you? Basic things like that. You will work with varying age groups at most language schools, but some are only for adults, which if you're someone that doesn't like working with kids, this can be great for you. So you will only have adult students. In other cases, schools only deal with, young kids. Most schools don't have it where it's really mixed, even if they try to have a mixed age group where they have both older people and younger learners. Generally, it ends up, swinging one way or the other. So either they will have mostly, young kids, like, elementary age students or kindergartners, or they will have mostly, older students, people that are in college, people that have already graduated. For adult learners, they will, honestly, in my opinion, be the most fun to teach. Generally, you will be teaching people that are learning English for travel, ironically. Travel and, leisure is more popular than business, but of course you will have people that want to learn English for university and or business purposes. You will have the most fun with these students, in my opinion, because there's a lot of fun conversations that you can have in which they can really teach you a lot about Japan too, and it'll be fun for them because they have to think about their own country in English. So anyway, as far as teaching students goes, like kids, it can be very stressful because you're only with these kids from, about 45 minutes to about an hour long, and having students that are disruptive, bad, tired, don't feel like learning, already had a long day, it can be super stressful, and there's not a lot of time in between lessons. This can seriously drive you crazy like how it did me, so it can be a very stressful job, and the day can go by very slow, but it can also go by very fast, and again, it's very rewarding because you instantly get experience with varying age groups. You learn how to improvise, how to ad-lib, how to do all kinds of stuff as a teacher, as well as it gives you lesson planning skills, because the book alone is not enough. You're going to have to add in some things yourself, whether it be creating worksheets or just finding videos for them to watch or something. So once again, the people that will probably benefit the most from, working at a language school will definitely be people that are newer to teaching English, and or people that do kind of want a little bit of a relationship with their students. You want to know their name, you want to have a little more control, you think you might feel a little more comfortable with lesson planning, or you want the experience with doing, real lesson planning, and you kind of get more freedom, like I said. So you are given a textbook, but it's totally up to you as a teacher to decide how you want to teach with that book. You have a lot of freedom to choose how you want your lessons to go. So it can be really fun, and it can also be really easy to teach this way, but it's also very stressful because your prep time is very little in between students. So things like going to the bathroom, making phone calls, getting food, etc. You either have no break at all, or your break is so short that it's not even worth it. And even if you get an hour-long break, because their lessons are back to back to back, you kind of can't really enjoy your whole break, because by the time your break was supposed to end, there's already students that have been waiting on you for 5 to 10 minutes, and your boss won't be happy about that. There's all type of crazy cultural differences and rules here, so just warning you about that. So just keep that in mind if you do choose to work at a language school, and also keep in mind that language school students can be one extreme or the other. You can have students that either have a very high English level or very low. So I didn't mention this for ALT students, but same thing goes with them. The majority of your class will have a very low English level. They will not be good speakers. They will mostly know written English, whether it just be reading or knowing grammar rules, etc. Language school students can typically be the same. You will oftentimes have students that went to international schools, like in kindergarten, etc., so they might know more than the other students in your class, but you'll also have students that are total beginners, but again, because of Japan's no-fail, policy type thing, and trying to keep everyone, together with people that look like them, you'll have people that are in a junior high, class for, learning English, that are seriously at a preschool level of English, and you're like, the student can't understand anything I'm saying. They don't understand any of their work, and they're just copying off of their partner next to them. But it's not up to you. Most schools don't care. They want the students' money, so they will let them keep passing on, just let them fill in the blank, not knowing the real answer, and not being able to think for themselves, but just let them copy off of you or the person that they're with. You will also have varying classes. There are private lessons, there are group lessons, there's all type of different stuff. So you might think private lessons are better, but to be honest, private lessons go by a lot slower, especially if the student has a very low English level. But even if their level is high, because you don't have other students to ask questions to bounce off of, you really have to do a lot of thinking and a lot of planning in order to make the time, to fill up that time that you have with that student, because private lessons are typically longer than group lessons. So keep all of that stuff in mind when choosing to be a teacher at an Eikaiwa. As for Eikaiwa teachers, the hours that you typically work, you would generally work hours either late in the morning or typically starting in the afternoon until the late evening. So I would say on average, most schools open up sometime around 12 or 1, but some can open as early as 10 a.m. A lot of these schools generally expect you to be willing to work at least, Monday to Saturday, if not including Saturday and Sunday, in which you'll just take off another 2 days during the week. They typically offer the lowest pay and salary, and these are the most unstable jobs, because unlike working at an international school, their money is solely based on having new students that sign up and students that stay and continue to pay monthly fees. Students can leave at any time, after their month is over with, and choose not to renew and continue lessons. So during global situations like what's going on right now with the world, it is possible to get laid off, it is possible to have your salary reduced, whatever the case might be. This is the least stable line of work. However, at the same time, when students want to learn English, they are more likely to sign up for an Eikaiwa over putting their kid in an international school, or as an adult, over, going to any other type of school, because that's kind of their only option for adults, is pretty much a language school. So either that or looking for a freelance teacher for private one-on-one lessons outside of a language school. So there's definitely more money to be made through Eikaiwas, in my opinion. But once again, for you as the teacher and not as, the employer, this can technically be a more risky position to accept. There are definitely, even right now during this time, where Eikaiwa is looking for teachers, but that's also because they have the highest turnover rate and typically offer the lowest salary. Even the companies that offer a higher salary, I say, in my opinion, this is the most stressful position out of all of them. Again, because you do have that freedom, but you're expected to do more work for the pay that you're getting. So especially if you're getting paid a lower end salary, it can definitely be extremely stressful and tedious. But the good thing about being a language school teacher over an ALT is that there's more opportunities to teach online, even if your school does shut down for whatever reason. So there's a lot more that can be said, but I think I've pretty much covered the basics of working at a language school and being an assistant language teacher. So let's move on to talking about being an international school teacher. So, number 3, working at an international school. So as an international school teacher, you would typically be a homeroom English teacher, meaning that you don't just, or I shouldn't say English teacher, but you're still classified as an English teacher, but really you're a normal teacher, just like how you would be in the US. You're typically expected to teach all subjects, not just English, but instead of, teaching in Japanese, you're using English to teach them the information that they need to know. You typically do have to have lesson planning skills, and you typically do have to have some type of involvement with either creating the curriculum, or there might be a curriculum put in place, but once again, you are solely responsible for doing lesson planning. You might have a lot of freedom because you might be given your own classroom, you might have your own key. Again, there's a lot of control that you have over creativity in your classroom, from decorations to school rules, etc. If you are someone that really knows what you're doing, or really wants to have that experience of being a legitimate teacher, you love students, you love kids, you're creative, you know how to lesson plan, you're an organized person, you will find that being a homeroom teacher at an international school is by far the best position. This position typically offers you the most money, even more so than the average ALT job. However, again, it depends on what company you are working for. Some do lowball and offer low salaries, but a lot of private companies that don't have like franchise schools, etc., they typically offer salaries on the higher end for teaching salaries here. It is the most stable line of work, and generally the students that are signed up for these schools, they come from families that do have money, as the tuition is very expensive. So you're more likely to have stable students, a stable job, stable career, and the turnover rate is definitely a lot lower. Most people that accept these positions stay for the duration of their contract at least. If not, they renew at least once or twice, and oftentimes they don't necessarily quit because they didn't like the company, but rather they decided Japan just wasn't for them, whether it be the culture, the food, a divorce, whatever the case happens to be. So again, this position does require you to be more professional, more on top of your stuff. You might have to grade papers, you might have an assistant teacher that you're in charge of, but again, having those different dynamics and having to deal with a larger class too, because you can have a class that has as few as 3 to 5 students and as big as 25 to 30 plus students. So it can be a lot for you to handle if you're someone that's brand new to teaching, but if you like having a big class, you like having control, this position can be very rewarding for you. International schools are also more likely to offer professional development for their teachers, and they typically give you more training overall. Not all schools include training, and some strictly only hire people that they believe already have prior teaching experience. It totally depends, and again, it totally depends on the school, but not all international schools have set curriculums. A lot of them only have outlines of goals that they want their students to reach and or meet, and everything else is kind of just fill in the blank on how you want them to meet those goals. So there can be a ton of freedom, which again, if you enjoy teaching, you enjoy lesson planning, you want to really, be able to put on your resume that you help build a curriculum, do things like that, this is definitely the position that you want to accept. But if you're someone that's lazy, you're not punctual, you don't like to work overtime, you don't like to bring your work home, you definitely don't want to work at an international school, because they will have really big events like sports day, Christmas parties, parent-teacher conference, etc. And you will definitely have to do a lot of unpaid overtime, whether it be coming to work early, staying late, coming on a Saturday, answering emails from parents during the weekend. There's all type of stuff that you will have to do outside of work. So there's a lot of work that goes into being an international school teacher, but the pro is beyond just, the satisfaction of having control. You will typically have the closest relationship to your students than any other position, because you're with the exact same kids, not for an hour, not 2 hours, not 3, but for the entirety of the day. And your students will really get to know you. You also get to go on lots of free field trips. That was one of the best parts to me about being an international school teacher at a kindergarten, was being able to enjoy all of the field trips that you get to go on for free of charge with your students while still being paid. So it's literally like going on, sightseeing, tourist, whatever type vacations. You can look at my older videos. I have videos showing myself on field trip with my own students. Really rewarding, really fun. You learn a lot about Japan. You get to take the kids there and see them have a lot of fun and learn about their own country. So yeah, very rewarding, and you will feel sad when they graduate or once you leave. So you really build a really close bond with your students, even the bad ones that gave you a hard time. So again, really just kind of think about that. Do you like kids? Do you not like kids? If you're not someone that likes dealing with children, you find crying and she hit me type stuff to be bothersome, you probably won't like being an international school teacher. Do also keep in mind that most international school positions are for preschool and kindergarten, but some schools, such as my last job, actually do have positions for elementary school. But of course, the higher up the grade you go, the smaller the class and the less loving the students are. So they're not going to be as close and, oh, like, we miss you, teacher, give you gifts and, make little drawings and pictures for you. For me, I love kindergartners because I like that soft, innocent, sweetness of them. But it totally depends on the person. Everyone has, different things they like and don't like. Some people can't stand dealing with kids. Some people don't like having to deal with children having accidents or having to clean them up, or maybe you don't like having an assistant teacher. I thought I didn't at first, but honestly, it kind of came in handy. It was useful to have an assistant. So that's that. This can go on forever. Again, kind of just think over your 3 options. You might want to experience working all 3 different positions before you decide which one's really for you or not. And be flexible. When I first came here, I had no interest in working with little kids. I wanted to instantly go to high school and junior high. And after having taught every age group, including adults, I can say with great certainty, I prefer kindergarten age students by far. And I don't like high schoolers. I also don't like dealing with babies. So again, like, your mindset, your wants will completely change after coming here. Do also keep in mind that you're dealing with a cultural difference, a language barrier, and again, like, not just like a matter of, how can I put it? It's not just a matter of being able to speak Japanese fluently, but the culture part also adds a really big twist in it, because the way that they learn and do things as a country is so different from how you do things in your home country. So there is going to be a lot of learning, a lot of lessons, a lot of mistakes to be made, a lot of lessons to be learned, but it will all be worth it in the end. So once again, if you want the links to everything, I will try to put them all together on my website for you. Obviously, I'm not going to take the time to go through each individual link. It would take way too much time, but I'll just give you another rough outline of what I pretty much said in this video, explaining to you the different, places to apply for a job at. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I want to get into the second part of this video, which is pretty much how to get hired quickly by these companies. So let's get started. The first thing that you need to do if you're looking for a job is to make looking for a job your full-time job. You always have a job. You're never without a job. If you don't have a job, your job is searching for a job. So in order to do that, I highly suggest you check out my video on how to create a resume here in Japan. But beyond that, you really want to make sure that you're doing everything correct during your interview. So really think about the questions that they're going to ask you. I have videos to answer all of this stuff, but really think about important questions such as, what's your philosophy as a teacher? Meaning, what do you basically stand for? What do you believe? How do you think that students learn best? What is your goal as a teacher? What is your purpose? How do you handle discipline in the classroom? What would you do if a student is crying, is sitting at the door, not participating? These are all questions that your interviewer will probably ask you. You need to have answers for these things. Think these things out. What would you personally do in these circumstances? Again, I have videos to answer these questions. You can watch my playlist on how to work in Japan, and or read my blog at comic95.com to get more information on that. But again, make looking for a job, your full-time job. Make that your job. You cannot send out one application once a month or once a week and then cry because you can't find a job. You have to really get on your grind when it comes to finding work. You have to make your resume as good as you possibly can. If you're not getting any replies back, think about your resume. Does your photo look good? Does your resume have, grammatical errors? Is there not enough information? Is the information in your resume all over the place and doesn't make sense? Like, what are you working with? You need to have other people, check over your stuff, proofread it for you. So aside from that, again, if you apply to those companies, so companies that I have listed on my website, that I think I'll try to add to my description as well. I don't want to say any because again, there's so many I will leave out, but I do want to also remind you once again This is to get your foot in the door. More than likely, you're not going to land your dream job as your first, second, or even third job that you have here in Japan. It's going to take working at different companies. You might quit, you might get fired, you might move, whatever the case might be. I've been through it all several times. I speak from personal experience. It's okay. Your goal is to get experience, to try things out, see what you like, see what you don't like. All of these companies will hire you quickly, but they're obviously not going to be the best companies to work for necessarily. So again, keep in mind that the goal for this is to get hired as soon as possible. And the way to do that is to apply to as many places as you possibly can. So you want to put together a really nice generic resume that can pretty much be sent out to everywhere, where it's specific enough, where it's clear you're trying to be a teacher, but not overly specific where it's clearly just meant for this one school. So anyway, apply to as many companies as you can, no matter what the salary is. You will find that there are even jobs here where the work environment is so good, you're willing to accept a lower salary because the job has such little stress that it gives you. You feel so relaxed. The staff treats you like family. You're okay with getting paid less because it covers your bills. You enjoy being at work. It's enough for you. So really be open-minded when applying for and searching for these jobs. And who knows, you might even be offered a higher salary than what was advertised, just by you being willing to take that risk and applying anyway, even although it isn't what you really initially wanted. You would be surprised. You also want to be very careful with your approach for finding a job. So again, a lot of people overlook a lot of different things because they think stuff is beneath them. But I made another video for students in which I was talking about don't forget things like Craigslist and Gaijinpot. I think a lot of foreigners that are here in Japan, they forget about Gaijinpot, they forget about Craigslist, and they think of those things as things for foreigners that live overseas. But no. These are the two go-to places to find jobs if you are living in Japan. There's tons of legitimate, real listings there that really will hire you. It can be competitive on Gaijinpot, but honestly, most of the applicants that apply there, you might feel overwhelmed because you're like, oh my God, it says 400 applicants. I promise you, out of that 400, 350 plus of them don't have a degree, aren't a native English speaker, aren't qualified for the job. You're probably the only person, if not the most qualified person, if you do have a degree, especially if you happen to be American or at least from one of the other four, big five English countries, basically. So again, know where to apply to, mass apply. I promise you, you'll be surprised at how many companies do get back to you. You'll find that somewhere between 7 to 8 out of 10 companies will reply back to you within a week, offering you an interview. So all of these companies, I'll list a few of them that I've already said before, like Eon, Nova, GABA, Shane. You'll find like Kids Duo, Kansai International, Hopa, all of these companies, Interact, Borderlink, just to name a few of them. All of these companies are constantly hiring year-round, and they all offer you a livable salary of at least about $2,200 per a month or more. It's not the best salary, it's not going to be the best job, it's not going to be the best hours, but again, your goal is to get a job quickly, whether it be because your visa is near expiration or you've been struggling and going without money. These are the companies that you want to apply to, and because they're so big and hire so many people, even if they don't hire you the first time you apply, you can continue to apply to these places, keep reapplying, and they will eventually become desperate and in need of a teacher, and they will give you a call back even if you're completely unqualified for the job. For those of you that don't know, I didn't apply to a mass company, but how I got my last job was actually from doing just that. I was working for a company that I was completely unqualified for. I did not have the credentials to work there, but again, they were so desperate and in dire need of a teacher that they took me on. I was the youngest teacher. I had zero experience teaching at an IB school, and of course, all of that ended up aiding to me. Now I have IB certification. I have, physical experience from teaching at an IB school for a year, so it can definitely be worth it to be persistent. And again, make looking for a job your full-time job. Do not give up. So that's that. I'm sorry I don't have any type of magical advice other than to pretty much explain to you the difference between working at these different companies. Do you want to be a language school teacher? Do you want to be an assistant language teacher? Do you want to be a homeroom teacher? Those are all totally different positions that require different amounts of dedication to your job, different amounts of hours, both outside of work and at work. They yield different salaries. You'll be paid based off of the position that you accept, off of the work that you do. So you have to ask yourself, is this worth it for me? Am I okay with working on Saturdays? Am I okay? Sure, I don't start work until 12 o'clock, but am I okay with not getting home until 9 or 10 p.m.? So you have to ask yourself these questions before you sign your contract, hopefully. And I hope that, this advice, these tips, help you narrow down your choice with deciding where you want to work and or finding a job. But again, these companies, they hire year-round, non-stop. They are always hiring. Even if they claim, oh, we won't be looking for a teacher at that time, trust me, by the time that next month rolls around, that next season, they've already had 100 teachers quit. There are way more companies to list and name, but once again, my goal was to give you a list of companies that have locations across Japan and most of their major cities, and have multiple different schools, not a company that only has 1 or 2 schools. There are tons of other companies you could work at, but my goal was to help you find a job as quickly as possible, which is by applying to places that are known for notoriously mass hiring. Again, keep in mind that companies that do mass hire, they also mass fire and have staff that mass quit. They have a high turnover rate. So this is probably not going to be the ideal job for you to work here until the day you die. It might seem perfect at first, but you will quickly get tired of it. There'll be stuff that wasn't inside the contract. There'll be all type of crazy, crooked stuff. But the goal is to get you working, to get you employed, to get money in your pocket for now. You can search for a better job later on. So that's that. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any job tips and or advice or anything you'd like to say, maybe you feel like I didn't explain something well, maybe you have more to add to it, please leave it down in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I'd appreciate it if you would like this video, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would also appreciate it if you would follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and you can add me on Snapchat. I also have a Facebook fan page as well. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to check out my website as well to kind of give you a refresher, recap this video, and give you the links to all of the companies that I recommend, that I know for a fact hire year-round, and that mass hire, and that you can interview at with ease. So, thank you so much for watching. Bye.